You are listening to Wait a Minute with Beth and Jessica.
Episode 77. I'm Jessica Pearson, certified life coach.
And I'm Beth Barnett-Babel, integrative nutrition therapist.
You know how it seems like you're always on and off a diet plan of some kind, or maybe you're just off your game and you can't find a way back? We totally get it. The good news is you're human and nobody aces it 100% of the time. Cycles are normal and consistency is key. Your health and well-being cannot be deduced to a time frame with a singular goal. You're an interesting and complex person with varied circumstances, and we know that life happens. Don't let life be the thing that holds you back from your health. We know the importance of meeting yourself where you're at and having access to ongoing support as your life and body change. We're creating something special just for you, a membership that provides the support and accountability you need to keep showing up and doing the damn thing of taking care of yourself and your health for years to come. Please join us and get on the waitlist at pathnutrition.com.
We keep our eyes peeled for things in the media or in real life that come from diet culture or that perpetuate diet culture in some way. These are often the subtle ways which it creeps in, which is why we are shining a light on it and sharing it with you.
We watched Hack Your Health, The Secrets of Your Gut on Netflix. And as always with any Netflix health or diet documentary, I go into it with a sour attitude because I just assume
you're skeptical from the beginning every time.
I am, yes, skeptical, cynical, judgmental, all of it.
All of it.
It's because we've been burned so many times by so many bad documentaries.
Yeah. But
this one was good. We liked it. So yeah, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, we're definitely diving in. So you can always come back. But Beth, kick us off. What did you think about it?
Well, I loved it from the beginning, and I thought that they did a really, really good job on explaining things, keeping you engaged, because they had some really cool graphics that were super cute. I'm like into that whole felt stop animation thing. It's just so cute. I thought they did a great job explaining it. They got a wide variety of people, both as like the scientists on it that was explaining it, and then the individual people that they were studying related to their gut health and, you know, their lifestyle and things like that and how they might be different. And they picked such a great, interesting group of people. I liked it. I was a fan. And because it was only like an hour long, right? Like they were able to pack in the correct information without leaving out too much stuff, which can often happen when it's real short, like the Oprah interview.
It was interesting. I noticed I had some kind of like weird bias that I had to check on myself because the main doctor, she's like young and blonde and pretty. And I was like, wow, Jessica. Like, what? I can't believe her. Like, because I was like, who is this lady? Like, She is a legit German doctor, Julia, or I don't know, how did you say her name? But I went to go find her on social media and I couldn't find her, which is fair because it's a lot to be a public person on the internet. But I did see that she actually wrote a book prior to this. So I think that this documentary came from her book. But I thought she was so knowledgeable and just like the things that she shared was really well presented, and they covered a lot of stuff. It's like stuff that we talk about with clients often. So I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing about it was new for me. It was all stuff that I already knew. There was just maybe like an update on a couple of the research that had been started the last time I checked on it, and then they have done it, or the results have come back. I think this is how they found. One of the studies they mentioned about taking the microbes from a obese twin and then putting it in a thin, like a human twin, and putting it in a thin mouse, and it got obese. Was I think that was, they use it a lot in the GLP-1 probiotic information. So I think that's how they found that Akkermansia is an important part of that.
Yeah, I wrote down another strain later in our notes we'll get to. Okay. I don't know if you've heard about it. So I loved how they snuck in there. They're like, this is why diets don't work.
Yeah.
Health is not just about dieting for a few weeks and then going back to your poor patterns.
Oh yeah, they had like nailed that whole concept of like, this is why diets don't work. Da, da, da. It was so great. Yeah, I was like, they took it right out of our mouth.
I was like, woo, woo. And then they even mentioned like calories. They were like, not all calories are created equal, and they're not end all be all because of how you and your gut respond to food. And I was just like, yeah.
I know, it's so awesome. Happy.
And then, of course, they did stool tests and they talked about blood glucose monitors. And it's like all the things that we've been doing for the last 10 years.
Yep.
I think I just felt validated, I guess.
Yeah, it was really good. And it's a good primer for people to watch, to learn. And then, yeah. Or if they've heard me talk about it a lot, so to remember all of that.
Yeah, it was a great reminder, even for me. I mean, I have been by your side for a long time and learned all of this stuff, but it was just kind of like a nice reminder. I also loved how they talked about, he was like, ABC, always be counting. And he said, not calories, count your vegetables. He's like, you want to have like 20 vegetables a week. And I was like, we've been saying this.
Yeah. Well, it was 20 to 30 a week. And I was like, oh, is that enough? The 20,
I know.
The 20 was low, but the 30 gets you closer to definitely in that right range. So if you watch it and you do the recommendation, just hear the 30 part.
Well, they also talk about like, don't jump from 0 to 30 because then you're probably going to feel bloating and your gut bacteria is not going to be up to snuff to handle all that. So they even walk through, and we'll talk about these individual participants in a second, but like, each person had different recommendations for how much to add and when and how and why. And it wasn't just the vegetables, there were other things. And I also loved that it wasn't coming from like there was no be vegan or be paleo. Like I don't know.
It was awesome. Just like eat a variety of foods was really it. Like that was the main thing, was like, you need fiber, tells you why. And then what happens, in our gut when we don't eat fiber, but it was basically like, you need a variety of foods. Like when you eat a particular way, we talked about if you eat a high-fat diet, then there's bugs that will respond to that and prefer that. And then if you eat a high-meat diet or a high-fiber diet, it all responds to that. They had said that the gut bacteria can change within 24 hours. And I thought previously I had read that, it was like it took about 3 days for the full conversion to happen, because they did this study in meat eaters and vegans, and it was about 3 days. So... But 24 hours, 3 days, which still I feel like fast time period.
Which is good and bad news. I think it's good news because it means like, oh, your one day of not eating vegetables doesn't like screw you for the rest of your life. Like you can just pick up where you left off.
Right.
And that our bodies are flexible, and that's the goal, is to have a flexible digestive system.
Okay, so tell us about our 4 people and their stories.
Okay, so our first girl, I don't know if this isn't the right order, but there was Maya.
She was first.
She's a Michelin star chef. She got her first Michelin star at like 20 or something.
23.
Insane. Yeah, that takes a lot of stress, honestly. I feel like that was the unsaid thing. Like they weren't like, wow, it was probably stress that also contributed to this issue. But she did mention how she was recovering from eating disorder, primarily anorexia, but that then as she recovered, she kind of moved more into the orthorexia. And I loved that she was willing to be vulnerable and honest about this. And I loved that they covered orthorexia, because I do think it's kind of common for people to become obsessed with health. And she talked a lot about that. So I liked that she brought that up and that they shared that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, her main thing, she just was eating mostly vegetables. So this is one of those interesting points too, of like, you can be eating clean and really healthy, but is it healthy to just have such a restrictive diet? Because she was so obsessed with like, I have to find the thing that is healthy for me. And so they did get to do the stool test on her, and her vegetables were helping. They were like, you do have some diversity in your gut. But just to backtrack, she was saying like she couldn't eat like cheese or chips or like what she called fun foods, because then she would feel sick for 3 days. And she said she would throw up. I don't know if that meant like because that's what her body was rejecting, or if it was disordered situation. They didn't clarify. But she would just feel really, really bad physically, mentally, emotionally, not eating just her vegetable diet. And so she did the gut test, and she had some diverse, bacteria in there from eating vegetables, which was good. But the doctors were like, you still need to expand what you're eating. And so they suggested that she microdose chips.
Yeah, to stop people want to eat the fun food or the thing that might be bothering them, but to not eat a whole serving of it. Eat like a chip or 2 or 3 and call it a day. Like, just allow your body to process very small amounts of something versus a whole serving of something.
Yeah. And I found it remarkable that she was able to do that, because I find that, some people are like, I can't just eat 3 chips. I have to eat the whole bag, or, like it's going to become my new obsession is like microdosing, all these things. So at least the way they portrayed it, she just like followed through on the information, was able to do it. And then even at the end, she was like they showed her eating like a bite of pasta, which was like something that she couldn't have done. And I don't know how long of time they worked together, but I was like, that's pretty remarkable recovery in a short amount of time that she was able to follow this information and do it. But I couldn't really find any follow-up of like where she's at today with her eating. She does have an Instagram, and it's mostly related to her baking business, because she's a Michelin star chef.
Yeah. It's not talking about her microdosing chip journey.
Yeah, so maybe she's microdosing baked goods. But I also find it fascinating that you can be someone who gets into the baking industry and then like not be eating your own thing. Like for her, it truly was just like this art medium that happened to taste good.
Yeah. Okay, so next up was Danielle. She was a doctoral student who's had lots and lots of chronic gut pain, and a very limited diet. So it said she started with a high sugar diet, and then in college she got IBS and took a lot of, it was like 6 rounds of antibiotics in a year because the doctors didn't know what to do. And then that just kind of made things even worse. And now she's down to about 10 to 12 foods that she can eat, and then takes, I've never seen so many supplements in one spot before. So I don't know, it looked like 2 handfuls of supplements that she takes daily. They didn't talk about her testing, did they? Did she not do a stool test?
She didn't do it on the show. Like, we didn't get to see that she did that. I feel like her story was mainly just to tie in with the fecal transplant plot line.
Yeah.
Because she just wasn't a part of what they had offered. And then I also feel like maybe they didn't tell us the whole story about what is with her, because I did go find her on Instagram, which we'll talk about in a second. So I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was strange because, they did highlight her and show her in the same sequence of like, as the story unfolded. But yeah, you're right. They didn't do a stool test on her, and hers would have been like one of the more important ones to do given her situation. So, and then they do talk about the fecal transplant towards the end of the episode, and I was like, oh, this was the only part that I was deeply concerned about, because of it was like a home job, and like they didn't. At first, he wasn't wearing a mask, but then they show him wearing a mask, and I was like, holy Batman. Like, there was open poo in their kitchen in a Tupperware container. I was like, wow.
Yeah, if you have a squeamish stomach, this part might be hard. And if you don't know what a fecal transplant is, right, there's a lot of research that shows that, we talked about with the weight, but it's not just weight. There's people who have had like, major digestive issues who have not been able to recover from it on their own with antibiotics or whatever. So they have had to get fecal transplants. It's life-saving, but it's not something that it's very, very rare and very hard to get because there's not enough stool for the demand.
No, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's the not enough stool for the demand. I think it is... They're still not real sure about it. They're worried about other disease possibilities. And so basically you have to be diarrheaing to death with C. diff to get it in the US and maybe Canada, but you can go to other countries and they will do it for Crohn's and other conditions. So.
Which was why I wondered, why is she doing this herself? And I wanted to know who prescribed her like the 300 bottles of supplements that she says she's taking. Like, I wanted to know so much more about her story. And I also have compassion because I know it's real. Like, we know that there's people out there that are suffering from mystery IBS symptoms or worse. And they're going to these GI doctors, they're going to all these specialists, and nobody can help them. And then it's like compounding the true physicality of their distress with their mental distress and mental health. And it's just like, it's really sad and it's really hard to wrap your mind around. I mean, we would definitely classify this as like a advanced gut health case that is, beyond our scope. It was interesting. So she did her own fecal transplants with her brother's stool at first. And she did say she started to regain some weight because she couldn't digest anything. So she was losing weight. So she started to regain some weight, which was positive for her. But then, like, I guess her brother has some kind of like acne that's supposedly genetic. And then she started to get acne.
Yeah, that was
So I was
weird.
like, acne would be a small price to pay.
Yeah.
for this situation. And then, so for whatever, I guess the acne she didn't like. So she went to her boyfriend's stool. And then she started to kind of get depression because he had some depression. And so, it goes to show that, yes, like, you can transport things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, that was kind of it. They didn't like do any follow up on her.
She went back to her brother's. She decided, I guess, the acne was better than depression, which, I would 100% agree with. So the end of her segment was them putting her brother's poo in their freezer. In capsules. And that was it.
Yeah. So then I was like, wait, why? I actually rewound to be like, did I miss her plot line, like her story? Because they really didn't cover her in full. Mm-hmm. And so then I went to her Instagram page and it's like, man, she is suffering. She recently, like, her colon stopped functioning. And it sounds like, she's complaining to her doctors about her colon not functioning. And they just kind of like pushed her aside and like ignored her complaints, which is like so frustrating. So then she had like an emergency, what is it? Ileostomy. I don't know.
Ileostomy. Uh-huh.
The technical term is, but the ileostomy. Yeah. So then she has, a bag and she posted her stoma on Instagram. And so, I mean, you see it and, you see just the suffering that she's experiencing. It's not just that, she also has like endometriosis. Like, she is living in chronic pain, chronic inflammation. Like, she is not doing well. I honestly hope that like a celebrity doctor like sees her story and like finds her and saves her at this point, because it's just, I feel so bad. But she did mention disordered eating on Instagram. And I don't know if that was referring to her current status or the past, because in the Netflix documentary, they did not mention any disordered eating. She just said, oh, I had a diet high in sugar. So I was like, well, it would to me, and I'm not a doctor or even a dietitian, but it would make sense to me if there was disordered eating up front that kind of like led to some of this IBS stuff.
Yeah, that's really common for
What do you think?
Disordered eating to have long-term GI issues as part of recovery.
I still feel bad for her. I hope that someone can help her because she deserves support. And then there was Kimmy.
Yeah,
she was fun.
She was
just
fun.
after weight loss. She's just like, I just want to.
Yeah, so she did the typical thing where she would lose weight and then gain weight plus more back and things like that. And so they connected her sample and her story with what's very common in industrialized countries with our food supply. And so looking at her stool sample, and it was low in some beneficial bacteria. What was interesting was it was Prevotella, and there are some Prevotella strains that are actually associated with joint issues and stuff like that. So that was really interesting. But she had none, and then she had none of this other type of bacteria, and they didn't mention it. But I bet it was Akkermansia because of the way they talked about it and the hunger signals and things like that. So.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You mentioned like the Prevotella is maybe not, I mean, there's maybe no good or bad, but you're like, if you have too much of this, is not a good thing. And
yeah,
they talked about, how in current times it's like certain bacteria are going extinct in our gut. And then they did a beautiful segment of how, your gut flora is like a forest and everything has to live in harmony. And so it's not just about trees or the flowers. Like there's also like the other stuff in there that we don't think about as being beneficial, but it's like it's all about the balance, and having the balance of all of the things in there is what keeps you healthy.
Yeah, you can't take one type of probiotic and expect that it all get better. I usually, when we're dealing with GI issues, give a certain strains of probiotics depending on what the person is experiencing, and then give like the signalers. There's these spore-based ones that are actually act as directors, and then we have to feed them. So we have to make sure that the food is right. So like, how are we going to manipulate the carbohydrates to function in this way that adds the fuel? So sometimes it's eating certain types of resistant starches. So there is a way to do this, but it's not just like going down to the store and hoping that a line is going to do the trick. That works for some people, but not all people.
Yeah, I also like that the doctor mentioned, she goes, you can do all this stuff without taking a stool test. Like you don't have to do gut testing, and you can just do things. But if you're up for the science experiment and you can afford to take these tests, like it's highly suggested, because then you can find those specific things that are right for you. And I was like, yes.
I love when one of my clients willing to do a stool test. It's my favorite.
Yeah. Okay, so our last guy is Kobe, the competitive eater. He's Japanese. He eats a lot of hot dogs.
Yes, if you have watched is it 4th of July? Is that when the hot dog eating contest is? So if you have watched that, you have seen him. He has won before, but he often comes in second to the other guy that frequently wins year after year. So that's not his only competitive eating contest. That's just one of the ones that he does. And that was something.
Yeah. They made it look like that's all he eats, and I feel like they didn't talk about his, like, what he eats day to day. But he did mention, I just don't ever really feel hunger. I don't really ever feel full, because obviously competitive eating is going to mess with your leptin and ghrelin and like your hunger full signals. And so he was just kind of messed up. But shockingly, in his stool test, they were like, your flora is not bad.
Yeah, they said that it's not bad because they, did it. They said because of his traditional diet that he ate growing up and then eats in between competitions, that they mentioned that was actually it. But it was his brain scan.
Which goes to show, like, a Japanese diet is so healthy that it can almost offset binging hot dogs.
Oh, that is amazing. But yeah, so his brain scan, this was my favorite part, because all I could think during this was like, I want to be on this show because I want somebody to scan my brain. I want to do a functional MRI, and you can't just go and get one. It's very difficult. You have to be part of a research study, and I haven't found one that meets the criteria for a functional MRI. But I thought it was really great. And what they said was that when it comes to food, looking at food and taking in all those signals, everything lit up in his brain. And so his brain is just confused as to what is going on. And so, because it had to suppress a lot of these things when he was competitive eating to be able to keep going during those competitions, because the normal signals had to be ignored. Well, anyway, so they just said that he can retrain his brain. It just is going to take some work to do so. So because of that, and the fact that he didn't like that his brain and his gut were not connected anymore, and he didn't crave foods and didn't have that sense of hunger anymore, he quit competitive eating. So he's been doing it for 20 years and now he is done.
Yeah, I wonder if that's true, because I was looking at his Instagram and it's still very hot dog centered. I was like, this is kind of his identity a little bit, and I wonder how he's going to make this shift, because that was like kind of looks like how he was making a living, you know? So
Well, is it
it'll be like
all
in every Instagram post.
A lot of hot dogs that he's eating at one time, or he just is like a connoisseur of now new different types of hot dogs. They do have some interesting hot dogs in Japan.
I mean, yeah, he hasn't posted anything about a competition, so maybe he's getting into something else, and he's definitely eating some other things.
Yeah,
but it's kind of like an extreme case of prioritizing your like career over your health, which like a lot of people do, and they just don't realize it, right? It's like, oh, I'm a lawyer and I work 80 hours a week, but like no wonder you don't have time to eat like a balanced lunch. And I'm not saying like, oh, all the lawyers should quit being lawyers, right? But it just goes to show like our culture, you know, is all about productivity and like success and go, 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 go versus like, it's okay to stop for like 20 minutes and eat a meal, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you want to watch more, which I think you should go learn about the whole microbe system and learn more. There is more things that they talk about each one of these characters, though we did go into depth about it. There is still a lot that you can learn from this, and it is great because there is no agenda other than the ABC, which is always be counting, and it was counting vegetables, not calories. It even said it on there with an asterisk, always be counting, and it said not calories. So go do that. Incorporate these different 30 vegetables into your weekly diet, and it's a good one.
Oh, wait, can we talk about the smoothies really quick?
Yeah.
This was the very first person, Maya. They like gave her this smoothie recipe, and I was like, wait, was it really all of those fruits and vegetables? Like,
I think she put in most of them. I have been to conferences before. There is a well-known functional medicine practitioner, and this is what he recommends people do. It's not 30. This one was, how many? It was like, how many were in that smoothie?
It was a lot.
It was a lot. Was it 30 or
That's
60?
what I'm wondering. I was like, was she just showing us the fruits and vegetables? She goes, this is like the amount of produce I would eat in like a week.
Yeah. Well, I think what the deal is that so here's how it works, is that there are individuals that when you have a GI system that is struggling, what they recommend is like, we called it the conference that I was at was like the veggie mash, and then this one was something else. But eventually, like, so the person that had these smoothies that had all these different fruits and vegetables, and it was mostly vegetables, so a wide variety of fiber sources is really the situation here. It doesn't have a lot to do with, I think, the greens or anything like that. It's more the different fiber sources. And so, because they all act a little different. And so if you do that and you have a little bit each day, you can actually increase your gut microbiota. So the veggie mash, what they recommend is you cook all these different vegetables. It looks and smells and tastes terrible. But the recommendation was really like only like 3 tablespoons a day. Like, you don't need a whole lot of it. So the smoothie thing seems like a little bit excessive. I don't think they need to do that much. Like, you could make one of those, but then freeze it and have it throughout the week.
Yeah, it sounded medicinal for sure.
But there was a bad combination of ingredients in there. And she's like, you could make this taste good. She was like, you would just need to add salt and some vinegar and make it as gazpacho. So I was like, there you go. That's what they said. It was like they just need a chef and a scientist to come together.
Yes, I hope that she'll launch like a line of soups and smoothies for gut health. That'd be awesome. I would buy that.
Pastry chef to that. That is the thing, is just trying to get a wide variety of fibers all mushed up together and getting them all in there to feed your bacteria.
Yeah, and if you guys don't already know, we do stool testing and food sensitivity testing. And Beth can order all kinds of labs. So if you're interested, definitely reach out.
Okay. Well, I sure hope we gave you something new to think about today and helped you take one more step on your path to freeing yourself from diet culture. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram at path_nutrition. Come get on the wait list for our upcoming membership at pathnutrition.com. We are so excited about this because this is the way to get the ongoing support that everybody needs.
Bye.
Bye.